All right, we're here in Paris, France. This is the Fly Out of Line podcast. On location, we figured out that we don't need fucking formal microphone to intimidate motherfuckers. We're fucking with lapel mics and iPhones. So yeah, we're here in Montmartre, up at top of a hill overlooking Paris. And I'm over here with two great friends of mine. ASKEW from New Zealand. He's an artist, designer, and positive thinker. And we're also here with my buddy DAX. He is from Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. DAX is just this really intense energy that happens to have had experiences in a little bit of everything, anything from graffiti to music to wild living.
Drug dealing.
Drug dealing. DAX is on this mission now of going from being a drug dealer to a spiritual healer.
That's right.
That's right. And also one more thing to note, ASKEW just had a really amazing show at Gallery 42B in Paris, France last night, and this is just sort of us hanging out at the top of the hill talking about our upcoming ceremony with ayahuasca. So check it out. The view is pretty dope here, huh?
This view is, I'm in awe right now. Where are we?
We're at the top of Montmartre in Paris.
I've never even heard of it.
Well, it's famous because it's the area where Pablo Picasso lived. A lot of artists were based here, and that's the Sacré-Cœur, which is an old Byzantine church. And it's also the highest point in Paris, so you can see everything.
You see everything but the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
Which I've still not seen yet.
You still haven't seen the Eiffel Tower?
No.
You can see the Eiffel Tower when you go around the other side a little bit, but...
Oh, is that the tip of it over there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've seen it now.
Yeah.
You've been here, what, 5 days now?
Yeah.
What have we been doing here for the past 5 days?
Mostly we have been talking and preparing for our ayahuasca ceremony, and we've also been preparing for your upcoming gallery show, Children of Ourselves. And I've been learning from you, and I've been stealing advice that you give your assistant. Mm-hmm. We've been eating mushrooms. We went to ASKEW's gallery show that was epic last night.
Yeah, but we went and did what? How did we show up at that art show?
We showed up in Parisian suits.
That's right, in style.
In style, yes. We
Yeah.
showed up like grown men.
That's right, some adult shit.
Some adult shit.
Getting on that adult math, and then we went soup bombing.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you.
Oh, no.
Afterward last night, we were with that dude Hefner, and he had a bunch of paint, and we went, like, we even did fill-ins and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
In the suits?
In the suits, and then we're taking posse shots.
Excellent.
In fucking suits, doing graffiti in Paris. But yeah, so yesterday we went out. Elliot, ASKEW, you've been out here preparing for what, the past month?
Yeah.
For an art show?
Yeah, it came out like at the end of August and worked right through September. It was out in Burgundy, so in the countryside on about 3.8 acres of land, eating a lot of fresh produce from the neighbor's garden, you know, like drinking the local wine and riding our bikes up to the local shop to get the fresh bread every day. And, you know, basically some days the only company I had were these two miniature ponies. You know, they would pop their head in the door and watch me paint. It was wild. Really
Are they
wild.
like free spirits? You can't like jump on the back of a pony?
No. I mean, one of them was a stud, like he was used for breeding. So like, you know, he would get. He's never been ridden in his life. You know, he only did the riding. That's what he did.
What did they use these ponies for?
Well, I guess like the female was a show pony. Like they entered competitions with her. They would take her to fairs and things, and young kids would ride her and stuff like that. But they're like 25 years old or something now, so they're like in their retirement era.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so they've come down from the stables down the road to live on this land and enjoy their twilight years. You know, so.
Paris is the place of romance, even
Oh
for
yeah.
ponies.
Well, Burgundy even more so.
I seen footage on your stories of like these ponies just sticking their head into your studio space.
Yeah, they were really like dogs. You know, they were really curious, really engaged. They wanted a lot of contact every day. They wanted, you know, pats, to be touched, cuddled, fed. They liked you keep the old bread for them. You know, so it's like it hardens up.
And it was just you and these ponies?
Some days, yeah. And my wife was with me, but you know, like she's a city type of person, so she wanted to get out and explore Paris a little bit. Like, so she took a few breaks from the country, but even she found herself really wanting to come back as well, like, and hang out.
What's different? What's different for you? You know, being that you're currently living in New York City, what's different for you in preparing? You know, in a country setting versus preparing artwork, living in a city. Is there any difference?
Yeah, there was a huge difference, man. Just like you know, the clarity you get when you actually are in a quiet place, a place so quiet that when there's actually a noise, it's quite stark. Like you really hear it. You know, like it cuts through. You know, and being alone in your thoughts. You know, like being somewhere where it's like at nighttime. You know, you could hear everything, like the owls. You know, in the woods and everything, and just it was just real interesting, man. Like bird life and everything there. No, Mister.
Did it allow you to develop?
Yeah, I mean, it just allowed me peace and quiet and a lack of distraction. I'm a distractible fucking dude, man. So it's good to have that. You know, yeah.
Well, Dax, you being someone that's from Atlanta, you know, being a city guy, I know that right now you live outside of the city. And, you know, experience some of that.
Yeah, I wanted to get away from the city life, especially with all the gentrification and the abundance of people who have moved to Atlanta. When I moved there, it was 2.5 million people, and now it's 6.5 million people. And that's been a lot for me to adapt to, and I never quite have adapted to it. So I moved out to the country to get away from that and to also clear my mind, to be able to think again and also redevelop my art and redevelop myself, just try to grow. Because I kind of, my growth was stunted for quite a while. And it started to, turning 42 this past September, I started really noticing that I needed to grow. And so I'm here. That's why it's part of me being here. I came to grow and learn.
Well, how does it work being, you know, being someone coming from graffiti? I mean, I assume that we've all been writing graffiti for over 20 years. You know, 25 years, over 25 years.
Indeed.
I mean, what year did you start writing graffiti?
I started being an established writer in '94, but I started drawing graffiti and staring at it and it'd be obsessing over it in '85.
Okay. So, I mean, being a graffiti writer, you know, going into your 40s, you know, at what point does it, you know, start to sort of wind down? Do you sort of become like how do you keep this thing fresh?
I don't use it for rebellion anymore. I use it for I mean, I do it for a career for one, but I also use it for my sanity. You know, when I get sick of living or sick of painting, even as a job, because it becomes you know, when you get money for this and there's chefs in your kitchen, it starts to lose some of its essence. So I think for me, you know, and now that I live in the country, you know, I'm still able to go paint freight trains, and it brings me back to why I love painting. It brings me back to my childlike memories. It makes me think like a child again. And for me to be creative, I have to be in a childlike state of mind. I can't be having all the adult stresses that your average adult has. So for me, I'll stunt my growth, or I get like what's like a writer's block when I get too caught up in all this 2018 internet world and city slicker life. So for me, being out in the country and then still being able to go do graffiti. But I mean, for me, graffiti has grown too. I don't do it for the same reasons, and I don't do it in the same way.
Okay.
Everything's more mature now.
Okay. So I know both of you guys. I've done DMT with both of you guys, and it had, you know, could you tell me anything about your experience with doing DMT? Did it have any type of influence in the way you approach life? I'll start with you, Elliot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did.
What was your DMT experience like?
I think like my initial experience was it was just a visual thing. It was a very surface level thing. It was kind of like if you went into a kind of a real micro kind of level of like what everything's comprised of, and I saw that everything was like faceted and rendered and digital yet organic, like pulsating and breathing, and it kind of you know, a little bit kind of in the vein of what I've been painting recently, actually, that first experience. But the second time I had
What are you painting?
Well, what I have been painting is actually the three-dimensional scans of random objects that people kind of turn their blind eye to. But they're, to me, recordings of, you know, the way that humans traverse, like, through public space or shared space, like, globally, like the kind of human diaspora, I guess. It was like, following on from my portraiture, was like another way to explore that without doing like literal portraits of like individual people. It was like a way to talk about mass portraiture, or like the mass movement of people, you know. And it was funny because like actually my second DMT experience was like I had an encounter with some kind of entity which I have a very hard time kind of explaining, because they didn't adhere to any kind of form of a being as I understand it. They, you know, were
describe visually what this entity looked like.
This entity had an ornate framed, gold framed head, face thing, I guess the best way I can describe it, that basically had pretty much a portal into like a deep kind of space or galaxy. No physical body that I could see of, and a massive, what I understood to be a hand, but not a human shaped hand, but it was a mechanical hand made of gold that basically was controlling a massive disc that basically was comprised of several spinning discs that were gold, and they had language on them, animated language, but it was firm like metal, but it was fluid because it animated in all the letter shapes of characters, which none of which I recognized, but some of which sort of I associated with sort of, you know, like maybe kind of Aztec or Mayan, kind of like, you know, and Egyptian, kind of all fused together. And basically this hand was kind of reconfiguring and shifting this disc into different kind of sort of, you know, configurations that, you know, I couldn't understand the language, but it was at the same time communicating telepathically with me to explain something a little bit more about the origins of us. And the main profound sort of takeaway from it was pretty much they were trying to get to me to explain that we've been in a much more elevated point in our evolution at an earlier time. We've had a higher civilization than the one that we sort of live in now. And also there were sort of some undertones of kind of this idea that we've been modified or tampered with, or we've been changed for some purpose at some point. And actually that change was not, it was more of an inhibiting change. It was a change that prevented us from reaching our full potential. And then the third one I call like the circus, which was funny because, you know, Kara had the same thing where I heard circus music was the first thing entering in. It was a
shout out to Carafina Antonio.
yeah. When she started talking about that, I was like, and her experience was very similar to mine in that sense that it was, I dropped down into the circus land. It was basically a very fluorescent colored, like infrared, like magentas, teals, yellows, like all these types of colors. It was a massive, like it was like a city, I guess, in a way. But
I think I've been there.
Yeah, every single component of it was spinning, moving, animated, and everything was like kind of like plateaued, like there were levels. And so I was sinking further into this place. Like I think I'd landed at a destination, and then like a smaller, like I'd go into like what seemed like a cylindrical kind of hole, and then I'd go in and I'd land on what seemed like the floor, and it would start spinning, and then I would lower, and it was just going forever. And it went for, you know, 3 or 4 minutes, and then I came out of that.
You just described my last DMT experience.
Was there any information
That's crazy when they have it, right?
in that experience, was there any information or anything like that being communicated to you? And was there anything that you pulled away in association to your current life?
What I pulled away from it, honestly, was how the fuck can I be seeing something that I have never seen or been able to reference at any point in my life visually, that's coming from somewhere so deep in my consciousness that it must have already kind of been there. And then I started to kind of have this feeling that it's tapping into something that we all have these references and things buried deep in our subconscious. We all share it, or we're all tapped into some source. It was beyond anything I could ever visualize, come up with, imagine. I've never seen anything that looks like that in a movie. I've never seen anything like that in a painting until after, when I started searching other people's DMT experiences and found that there was this person had put this illustration up on like DeviantArt.com or something like that. It was like my first DMT experience, and it was like bang on like what I saw. Like it was like, well, the best that anyone could have rendered it from their imagination, like their memory, you know.
Right. So I was out in Los Angeles back in May, and I was on a really positive buzz, having, you know, found out who my father was, and it was like a foreshadowing experience from DMT that sort of said something like that was going to happen. And then when it did happen, I let go of a lot of, that's that country life, right?
I can't wear shoes anymore, man. And my feet feel fucked from
they're just feet condoms, bro.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to just let it fly, bro.
It's true.
But anyway, I was out in LA, and I was on this tip of wanting to share DMT with people, seeing the positive benefits of it, and, you know, wanting some creative friends of mine maybe to have a similar experience. And on the last day that I was in LA, I made a decision to change my flight and stay an extra 5 days and move some of my old artwork that was being stored in Los Angeles back to New York. And I happened to be staying at the same house as DAX here, who just came off of a long cross-country trip. And the whole sort of idea of maybe going and painting together on the day that the morning after him arriving turned into us being able to kill some time. And then I convinced him and this guy Blah to do DMT with me. And that was your first experience, right?
Yeah, well, my first, second, third, and fourth experiences were with you.
That's right. So what could you tell me about leading up to your first DMT experience, and what was it that, you know, what was it like? How could you describe it?
Well, when I left Atlanta, Beggar had called me and told me to drive cross country. He had to deliver his car from Detroit to LA. So I went to Detroit, and I told him that I wanted to stop and, you know, soak in the scenery. I didn't really know what I was doing. At the time, I was very numb, and I was drowning in negativity. So I was you know, desperately looking for a way out of my mental cage.
You've lived such a like intense like party lifestyle, you know, just being all over the place since you were a teenager.
Yeah, and living that lifestyle has kind of kept me from facing a lot of stuff. But even worse than that, when I decided to try to face stuff, I kind of just shut down and I blanked out, and I became a bit numb and depressed. And I would still go out and socialize and live my life, but I wasn't enjoying it. And I wasn't necessarily hating it either. I just kind of just went numb. So I decided to jump in the car with Beggar to take time to sit in the middle of beautiful scenery, whether it be Colorado or Montana, you know, all the beautiful places you pass, Utah. So I took time to like eat really healthy, not do any drugs or alcohol, and clear my mind, and it worked. I started, you know, seeing the presence of God, what they say the presence of God is. So when I ran into you, I was kind of like in the perfect place to have a DMT experience, not knowing that, never considered doing DMT. And when you asked me to do DMT, I turned it down originally. And then I told you that I had cleared my mind and that I didn't want to interrupt my clearing of my mind. I felt like I finally had reached a good place. It took, you know, about 2 weeks to do it.
Well, how did I sway you? How did I sway you then?
Because you asked me why I didn't think I should do it, and I told you that I just took this journey across the country with Beggar, and I didn't want to taint it. And you told me that it wouldn't taint it, it would accentuate it. And you went deep into explaining why I had pretty much gotten prepared for a DMT ceremony, and you explained it in it being a ceremony and not us sitting around getting fucked up like a bunch of kids. So I took that to mind, and you convinced. We didn't have to take too much to convince me. You just kind of stated the facts, and it sounded good. And after you explained what it does for people and what it had done for you, I thought that maybe this was the grand finale of my journey, and it was.
You said that some of the aspects of ASKEW's trip you could relate to.
When I did it with I did 2 ceremonies with you, one in LA, one in Brooklyn, but we did 2, I don't know, we smoked it twice. You know, we had experience, then we took time off, then we smoked it again.
Yeah, 2 sessions
And then
in one
that was
sitting.
in LA, yeah, 2 sessions in one sitting. We did that in Brooklyn, then I decided to have my mother come into town and do that, and we did the same style of ceremony.
So what?
The last session I did with my mother was exactly what you said with the spinning spindles, the circus music.
Well, take us through it. Take us through it. So I had done You met my mom. I did DMT with my mom. And
you did it with your mom?
Yeah, I did it with my mom. It was real interesting to get to see like an adult, like an adult's perspective on DMT, and hers was associated with like family, and she saw all these like black and white pictures of like her like aunts and some of these relatives who I've never met before and stuff like that. It was quite deep and profound. She said she wanted to do it again, but I had mentioned to Dax that I had done this with my mom, and I felt like it was a bonding experience to do that. So for Dax, we did DMT, you know, like improvisationally in Los Angeles. Then in New York, I convinced you to come out to New York, and we did DMT session there, followed by going spiritually all city in a week's time, where we incorporated deprivation tanks. We went to my Aunt Dolly's house in Staten Island, got our cards read.
Microdosing, mushrooms?
We went really deep on mushrooms. We
also
did mushrooms. I did acid. We did a whole bunch of things, you know, like all this whatever kind of spiritual thing we could fit in, we did.
We went to Electric Forest in Michigan. We drove from Brooklyn to there. We camped out in the woods.
Sick. That's awesome.
And Dax like prepared really hard for that. Like he was on like some
overboard.
Kale salad fucking like regiment or whatever.
I went all raw diet.
Yeah, doing yoga and stuff like that.
And then before Electric Forest, I started eating nothing but apples and drinking lots of water. And I mean, the journey was many things, but yeah, it ended up in me having a profound experience out there in the campgrounds of New Era, Michigan, where Electric Forest is hosted. And it changed my life. I mean, I'm totally a different person now since, you know, maybe was it 3 months ago that when we were in LA?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, maybe more now.
When I left Atlanta, I was distraught, and it's the first time I've been truly distraught in my life. And like I said, I think maybe the first signs of a midlife crisis maybe started kicking in very quickly. And I kind of always dissed my friends who were going through midlife crisis, like, man, enjoy your fucking life. Like, if this is a midlife crisis, I love it. But then it actually turned real on me.
Yeah.
It backfired on me, making fun of it and stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me about, you returned to Atlanta after going, you know, from this LA DMT trip, New York DMT experience with all of these other things that we did, spiritual things that we did. You ended up going back to Atlanta, and you made this decision to invite your mom to your house.
Yeah,
tell me about that, and then tell me about the actual DMT experience and how it related with Elliot.
I'll go back. The one we had in Brooklyn was the most profound one I ever had, where I actually saw an entity, and I took in the most, like, maybe not data from the universe, or maybe it was coming from the universe, but it pertained to me in my life. And it was, I prepared for that one very well also. And when we did it, I started hearing children laughing at me. And at first it was cute. Then I started, I was in an octagon cage that also had very LED lit patterns, that had patterns coming out of patterns, very, very sacred geometry style, psychedelic sacred geometry. And I was in this octagon cage, and it was presenting me black and white pictures, kind of like your mother said. And at times I would feel very comfortable, then I'd hear the children laughing again, and I started feeling like I started seeing them trying to poke me, and I felt as if I was being poked at, and I started feeling a little bit of humility, and I felt offended. And when I started feeling offended, I started getting angry inside of this. And then an entity presented herself, and she looked like something out of a science fiction movie, maybe like not necessarily an aliens movie, like maybe something you'd see in the bar, like with those Star Wars movies when they go to the bar, but she, like one of the prettier aliens, maybe. And she had like the things coming off her face like that. And when she would present herself, everything would disappear as if they were scared of her.
Did she have breasts?
She did have breasts. Yeah, I only seen her from the waist up, but she had breasts, and she was beautiful and comforting. And as she would disappear, the darkness would come back. And at one point, a big dark hand came through one of the octagons, and it had long nails, almost like a shadow of a demon hand came, and it scared the shit out of me. And right as it was about to touch me, I couldn't get away from it. She presented herself again.
Damn.
And then from there, I started seeing more memories and even things from the real world. Like I seen unicorn stickers from bubblegum machines that I had seen, just bizarre things. And then a woman named Joy, who's a famous singer, she used to be in Lucy Pearl. She was like a motherly type of figure in my life. She came out of the one of the bars of the Octagon, and the woman, the entity was staring over her, and she almost seemed as if she was friends with the entity or like the daughter of an entity. And that put me into place, because the only time I never had a lot of respect for women because my mother had disappeared for so long. I didn't trust women, but Joy was the woman who I've trusted the most in my life. And when it showed me her, it gave me full trust in this world. And I'm not sure why it showed me her. I'm still, a lot of this stuff, I'm still digesting it, figuring it out. But as I'm conscious of it, and as we talk about it, I constantly still figure out stuff. And it's been, months since the first one, but I'm always reflecting on it. Every time I go to bed, I also now have the ability to go deep into my conscious and communicate with the universe and to the rest of the world. This sounds like some ridiculous hippie shit, but it's my reality now, and I take it very seriously. And it's like getting fucking 40 years of psychiatric help all in a couple months.
So when you ended up returning back to Atlanta,
you
had these decisions to strengthen your relationship with your mother, repair this relationship with your mother. You said for 17 years your mother abandoned you.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but when I got back to Atlanta, I started talking to my mother. My stepdad had been drinking since there was, the hurricane had hit, Irma had hit. It turned their power off for months. My schizophrenic uncles, my grandmother died. All this stuff happened to my mother. She got very distraught. Then my stepdad had drank himself into a coma. They ran out of money. So I invited her to come stay with me, and she turned me down. She said, "No, what about my cats? What about your stepdad?" I said, "Man, I think it's time for you to help yourself." And I'm here doing a spiritual boot camp at my house. I'm, cleansing myself constantly. I'm stretching. I'm getting my shit together, and nothing's getting in my way. And I invited her, and she was hesitant. I think after a couple of days, she realized she had nowhere else to go and no one else. And I said, "Look, you're more than welcome to come here, but when you get here, it's not going to be a vacation." So she decided to come, and she showed up distraught, like shaky, confused, pouring hot water into all, so I can go on and on. So I took time with her to teach breathing, and eventually it led into doing DMT with her. And that was so profound that even till this day, she has changed her life. She's quit smoking, drinking. She's even, my stepdad's out of the hospital. He's even looking at her as a leader now. He's not the man of the house so much as now, because she has a lot of knowledge. They don't know what to do with themselves. He's 55, she's 65. But when we did the DMT, I had my friend's little brother come over, and he did it with us, and he was also needing some sort of spiritual guidance. And when we did it, Joe had taught me through experiencing with him, and I also got on Skype with him, taught me how to do it properly and to lead like kind of like a beautiful dinner party type situation, make it very comfortable. And we did the DMT. And
what was your experience like when you went in? How did it relate to Elliot's?
Well, the second time we smoked it, the first time I smoked it that night, I kept being distracted by my mother. I was worried about her. She's older, so I was worried that she might die or something. I don't know. I was just kind of had like my own motherly instincts to be motherly towards my mother. And I kept coming out of my experience and not even seeing anything. It was just like I'm in a normal room, and I would look and see she was okay, and I would just go back and lay down and go right back, blast back off. And I did that several times, so I had the ability to come out and stop it and check on my mother. And the last time that I laid down, a shadow came across the floor from my mother's head into my head. And it was comforting. I felt like that was the true bond that we needed back, that I'd lost maybe when I was 9 years old with her. So that was beautiful. The second time we smoked it that night, I went into that world that you went into, because I wasn't worried about my mother this time.
Describe it.
I instantly went into it, and it was like floating through a multi-layered carnival. There was like poles with spindles, and these were all LED backlit, almost like plexiglass, purple and orange, and they were like layered as if they were like, almost as if somebody in the real world could have built this stuff. Yeah. And I was able to
color, black and white.
It was beautiful colors. Mostly oranges
vibrant.
And purples, very vibrant and backlit, like colored plexiglasses with backlighting
hazy,
on them.
sharp.
Very sharp, like as if we're like right here, like this.
That's it.
And and it wasn't like the other DMT experiences where it was like just moving so fast. I was floating through it this time, and I was able to like just really enjoy it and take it in. And then each time is different and each time is profound, and it's kind of like you've explained to me before, it's like you have to keep getting through these like video game levels. You don't get to go to the, I don't know if there is any end to it, but you get to the, the first time we do it's like getting to the front door. Then the second time you get to go in through the front door and maybe go to the
lobby.
The lobby, yeah, you get to the lobby, and then you're allowed to go up and down these elevators and into different rooms and different, I've been to rooms too. I've been to rooms. I've seen things that you said are a mixture of Mayan and Native American. Things remind me of the New Orleans Indians. I see a lot of Egyptian things. Him and his girlfriend Vic had been sitting on a couch next to me at one point, and they were encased in, kind of like when you see tombs of pharaohs and stuff. I'd seen them in those.
Wow.
So a lot of the stuff that
in
we
New
see
York
in
really?
New York,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things. There's a lot of overlap between symbolism, Egyptian, and kind of like these indigenous cultures and the stuff you see there into these worlds. But they're always way more vibrant in color and psychedelic, and everything always to me seems like it's made out of plastic, but like really shiny, nice, clean plastic.
To me, it was like almost had that feeling like like perfectly rendered, like really slickly rendered digital kind of surfaces.
Yeah.
Like it was really like beyond, like so real, but beyond real, like perfect real.
And clean.
Clean, very clean.
So we're here in Paris, for the people that don't know, we're here in Paris. ASKEW just had an opening of his show that he's been preparing out here in France for the past month. I'm here in France, in Paris, on a 3-month residency preparing a show opening this November. But one of the things that I really wanted to achieve while out here was to organize an ayahuasca ceremony. And it just so happened that I was able to do ayahuasca back in May. And all of the preparation and experiences leading up through DMT and applying some of these lessons and letting things go, getting to the point of doing ayahuasca, I went really deep, really far, and had a very moving experience. And we had this great experience in upstate New York, in Ithaca, and it changed my life. It renewed my enthusiasm for living. So by chance is in France doing his own art show. He's an artist, he's a singer, he's a musician, and we're here preparing for a ceremony. Next week we'll be having our first, it'll be your first time doing ayahuasca. It will be my second experience doing it. So we've been going through a lot of conversations about preparation and everything like that. Based off of some of the things that we've discussed, I'd like to ask you both, why would you even want to do something like ayahuasca, and what are some of the ways in which you're preparing, and what do you expect to sort of happen in it?
For me, I heard once that when it's ready, it comes into your life, and actually it's the only time I ever have been offered or invited to partake in something like this year. Since I did the DMT, I haven't done DMT or mushrooms or LSD or anything at all this entire year. I've been very sort of focused on what I'm doing. Like I've had a very singular focus that I kind of walked away from that last experience with and felt that I needed to realize through the making of this work that I showed in Paris. And this kind of journey in a lot of ways is really tied with this place, so it just seemed like very perfect and opportune timing when you made the invitation, and also to my wife as well, who I think is also kind of in a real crossroads, creatively speaking and career-wise and life-wise, and for her to be invited and have the opportunity as well is something we talked a lot about wanting to do that, and to do that, have that experience at the same time,
And what are you doing now to prepare for it?
For me, I've been in the country for the last month, which has been really good. I've had my shoes off a lot. I've been drinking a lot of water. I've been sleeping good. I've been working, obviously, eating really well. I have been drinking a bit, like wine with dinner and everything, as is kind of customary here in France, but not overdoing it. Not overdoing anything. I quit coffee about 7 weeks ago, which was just off the back of, we had a long run of overseas travel, and we found ourselves in situations where we were able to drink. We weren't drinking to excess, but we were just drinking quite consistently. Like, my family are quite consistent drinkers. A lot of people in New Zealand and Australia are. And we went to my sister's wedding in Bali, and it just seemed like we need a little bit of a detox. We wound up in San Francisco, and all of my wife's friends were around and excited to see us. And there was just a lot of going out and everything, and it just felt like we needed a bit of a detox. So we went on a little soup cleanse and kicked the caffeine, and my caffeine withdrawals this time were the worst I've ever experienced. All the times I've taken a break from coffee.
You were like an intense, coffee enthusiast, man.
Yeah, well, as I said, I have I've always had real hyperactivity, some would say ADHD. I'm pretty typical in that sense. And I tend to overstimulate as a result, because I sort of coffee has a different kind of effect on me. It slows me down a bit.
Like your Adderall?
Yeah, and so I drink a lot, sometimes, a minimum of 3 espressos a day, but sometimes 6.
What do the withdrawals kind of feel like?
Oh, withdrawals are the worst, man. Just a really full-on hypertension headache, in the back of my head and the front of my head, right here, which has always been an issue for me, because I had a brain issue a few years back, or back in 2011, when my brain just completely shut down. I guess I had a reboot. I have a blood vessel in my right frontal lobe that just constricted and stopped all the blood flow to my body, and I just fucking collapsed in the middle of the city. And the headache that I get coming off of coffee is very reminiscent of the start of that headache that I had before that went down. So I just was really paranoid, oh man, is this
right before preparation for a show, huh?
Yeah.
Or during.
But I felt great, man.
Do you have a desire to drink coffee?
No, I haven't had a desire to drink coffee at all. Everyone around me has been drinking coffee. I've been to cafes. I just had cold pressed juices and things like that, and just try to get my water consumption up mostly, man. Just hydrate, and I felt great. I've been waking up with a great amount of energy. I've been sleeping much better. Generally, been good. I think it's been a good move. Of all the ones, I think that's always been my main vice, because I didn't touch drugs and alcohol for 15 years. I was and I was a vegan, and I was really
caffeine is a drug, isn't it?
But that was my drug. That was my one vice.
Yes.
I really relish in it. So yeah.
What do you think? What do you anticipate in this ceremony next week with ayahuasca? What do you think?
I'm just going into the ceremony with a completely open mind. I want to surrender. I want to allow myself to surrender. I've been through a gradual process of letting go of a lot of things over the last couple of years. I went through a big, massive upheaval in my life, which was mostly my own doing, and completely really my own doing, but part of a larger thing that I know, a path. I was supposed to kind of correct my path in some way. I know, I know that that this kind of, if it was my midlife crisis, I don't know, but it was a lot of positive shit has come out of it. You know what I mean? A lot of stuff, and I grew up in a small country. I was very ambitious. I went really hard doing a lot of things. I got known. I had my position, or so I thought, and I had a very stationary and rigid perspective of who I was and where I fit into the world and what I can do and what my powers are and everything. And then suddenly I kind of just, through the series of life events, just kind of lost everything and grip of everything, and became a very fragile and vulnerable person, and out of my depth completely in a lot of situations. And the people who have been in my life through that time have seen that, and it took a long time for me to let go of certain things. There was a lot of things I couldn't comprehend were barriers, because I didn't know how to surrender myself. I was really I've got a real tendency to kind of want to control the situations that I'm in and keep in my comfort zones and know what something is, you know what I mean? So Yeah, you know, I've just been gradually letting go of a lot of stuff, man, and you know, I'm far from done. You know?
Wonderful. How about you?
I'll go back a little bit to, you know, how I was before I started this journey, the spiritual journey, and feeling numb and kind of just not appreciating or enjoying anything anymore, not even drugs or the women, the things that usually got me off. Everything just I lost my spice for life, and I feel like I've regained that. Like kind of like when we've had these conversations before about, you know, you first get out in the world. We used to wake up really early just because everything was exciting when you're a little kid, you know. You're like 10 years old and you finally get to venture out, and it's like everything's exciting. It's like I kind of got my spice for life back in general, and that's been the best thing that I've gotten out of it. But leading into ayahuasca, I still think there's some underlying issues, you know. I didn't realize I had so many invisible boundaries. A lot of this stuff I'm starting to realize all this stuff now. And even though it's starting to trickle down and I'm starting to let go of a lot of things, I think ayahuasca can like maybe fast forward the process of all this. I don't think I have to do it to get to where I want to go, but I think that now that I'm 42, I think that this experience is going to allow me to enjoy the rest of my life and also creatively not have boundaries. I've had a lot of, you know, there's probably boundaries I don't even have any clue about because I'm realizing that I have them. Hanging out with you, I didn't realize that you know, doing art, there are no rules, but I've had a lot of rules and I don't know where they came from and why I have them, but they're there, and I'm worried that maybe there's a lot of aspects of my life that I have these things with, and I want to let those go, and I want to I just want to be happy.
I relate to a lot of what you just said. Yeah.
So I would say that I know I am, but it's safe to assume that we're all looking forward to this experience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, there's moments of nervousness, but there's ways of overcoming that. You know, you've helped us all with that. And then the preparation, you know, not having sex, not whaling the Jennings, even not drinking caffeine.
Whaling the Jennings?
You know, whacking it.
Oh, like whacking off?
Yeah.
I never heard that one.
I never know. That's a new one.
That's how I describe it. But
but
also just eating clean, drinking water, not smoking marijuana, which is all things that I love to do. But it's not hard to do because we're doing this out of respect for the ayahuasca, and we don't want to interrupt
respect
it.
For yourself.
And having respect for ourselves. Having respect for myself is the beginning of having respect for anything else.
That's right. So, on that note, this is going to be a part 1 of the Fly Out of Line podcast. Please follow this up with part 2, which is going to be the morning after our ayahuasca ceremony,
yes.
And we're going to do a little recap, talk about some of our experiences. So,
we will not be the same people who are sitting here now.
We're just going to be a bit more in touch version of ourselves.
I'm looking forward to being even more enlightened, if that's possible.
That's right. So, Fly Out of Line podcast, flyoutofline.com, at Fly Out of Line on Instagram. You could find Askew's work.
ASKEW1, ASKEWONE, on Instagram.
And do you still have your website up?
I do. www.askew1
Numeral 1,
Yeah.
ASKEW numeral 1.com. And then DAX, it's DAX. What's your Instagram? How's it go?
DR.DAX, it's Dr. abbreviated DR.DAX. And you can find me in real life in Atlanta,
right.
Georgia.
You know, DAX is one of these like iconic motherfuckers who's just happened to be around for so many things. They were telling me that that dude Bubba Sparks, this rapper from the South, he calls DAX the Forrest Gump of hip hop. He's just happened to be around for everything.
Present.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know,
Could have been worse places to be.
That's right. It's an honor to have him here, and you know.
It's an honor to be here, and thanks for having me in all these great situations, Joe.
Chilling out
Joe
with fucking
has pulled me out of my comfort zone and into new comfort zones.
That's right. All right, peace.
Let's make a podcast. All right.